We are here because you are selfish, ungrateful, and tearing this family apart. My mother, Stephanie, said that into a microphone, standing under the massive gold leaf chandeliers of a luxury resort ballroom in Charlotte. On my 30th birthday, 40 people sat in folding chairs, staring at me. My father, Gregory, held a 3-page list of everything I had done wrong since I was 8 years old. My sister Madison aimed her phone at my face, broadcasting live to her thousands of followers on TikTok. I did not cry. I did not leave. I sat there, waited for them to finish their performance, and then I said 6 words that changed everything. Funny. I have been recording too. Welcome to the Turning Tables Stories channel. Sitting here with my coffee, watching the world go by in this quiet moment, I'm reminded of how unpredictable life can be. Where are you joining me from, and what is your favorite drink? I'm looking forward to your comments. Now, let's get back to the moment that vacuum-sealed silence broke. The silence that followed my 6 words was not just quiet, it was vacuum-sealed. It was the kind of silence that has actual weight, pressing against the expensive molding of the room, and the 40 pairs of eyes suddenly pinned to me, like biological specimens. I did not rush. I did not scramble. My training as a financial manager has taught me that the person who controls the pace controls the outcome. Anger is a volatile asset, but clarity is a fixed one. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. The screen was a sharp, clinical blue against the warm amber light of the chandeliers. I watched my thumb move with the precision of a scalpel. There was no tremor in my hand, no hesitation in my heart. I had audited this family for 8 years, and tonight, the ledger was finally going to balance. I looked at my sister, Madison. She was still holding her phone, the red live dot glowing, like a predatory eye. She thought she was capturing my destruction for her followers. She thought my 30-year-old face, streaked with the tears she expected me to shed, would be the viral fuel for her life coaching brand. I did not give her the satisfaction. I looked past her, to the high-end sound system, mounted in the corners of the room. I swiped down on my control panel. Searching for devices, the Resort Ballroom North signal appeared. I tapped it. The system gave a soft, digital chirp. It was the sound of a trap snapping shut. Gregory, my father, finally broke his paralysis. He took a step toward me, the 3 pages of my alleged failures still crinkled in his fist. His face was a mask of stern, fatherly authority, but I saw the slight twitch in his left eyelid. He knew. Deep down, in the place where men keep their secrets, he knew I had not been just visiting on those Sunday evenings. Grace, put the phone away, he said. He did not yell. He used that low, vibrating tone he used to keep me in line when I was 10. You are having a moment. You are stressed. We are doing this because we love you. I did not answer him. I did not need to. I just looked at the 40 people in the room. The neighbors, the colleagues, and my boss, Marcus. I wanted them to witness the transition. I wanted them to see the exact moment the ungrateful daughter became the recording clerk of the Mercer family's sins. I hit the play button. The audio did not just come out of my phone. It exploded from the surround sound speakers, filling every corner of the 3,000 square foot room. It was high definition. It was unmistakable. And it started with my father's voice, sounding looser and happier than I had ever heard it in my life. Yeah, Linda, Tuesday works perfectly, the recording began. My father's voice was light, almost youthful. Diane has got her Bible study at 7. I will tell her I am picking up some specialized parts at the hardware store on the edge of town. In the ballroom, the real Gregory went from red to a terrifying ashen grey. Beside him, my mother, Stephanie, stood perfectly still. She looked like a statue, carved from ice and resentment. The woman in the recording, Linda, laughed. It was a warm, intimate sound that suggested a long-standing familiarity. She still does not suspect anything? Linda asked. The speakers rumbled with my father's reply. 22 years, and she still thinks I go bowling every Tuesday night. She actually believes I am that consistent. I will bring dinner. That Italian place you like, the one with the quiet booths in the back. She will never know. I watched the guests. This was the immediate retaliation I had promised myself. Marcus, my supervisor, uncrossed his arms and leaned forward, his professional mask slipping into one of pure, unfiltered shock. Carla, from the office, looked like she wanted to crawl under her folding chair. The whispers started then, a low, rhythmic hissing that sounded like a room full of snakes. 22 years. Someone breathed. The phrase bowling on Tuesdays echoed through the crowd, like a curse. My mother finally moved. It was not to me. It was to my father. She did not scream. She did not throw her microphone. She just stared at him with an expression of such profound, sudden realization that it felt like watching a building collapse in slow motion. Bowling, Gary? She whispered. Her voice was tiny, but because the microphone was still on, her whisper was amplified to every person in the room. 22 years of hardware parts and bowling? Gregory's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He looked at the 40 people watching his life's greatest lie play out in Dolby Digital. He looked at Madison, whose phone was still aimed at the scene, still broadcasting to the internet. She was frozen, her eyes darting between the tripod and the carnage. She realized, too late, that she had just live-streamed her father's confession to a 2-decade affair to her entire coaching community. Her Gary Life Coaching brand was currently being liquidated in front of a global audience. I did not stop the recording. I let the audio play through the sounds of them ordering appetizers, the sound of my father complaining about how cold the house felt lately, and the sound of him telling another woman she was the only thing that kept him sane. I sat in my defendant's chair, the one they had placed in the center of the room to shame me, and I realized this was the first birthday I had ever truly enjoyed. This was not a breakdown. This was not drama. This was accounting. My father had overdrafted his moral credit for 22 years, and tonight I was the one performing the foreclosure. I looked at the 3-page list of my sins that was now lying on the floor, forgotten. Page 1 probably mentioned that I was cold. Page 2 likely noted that I did not show enough affection. Now, the room knew why. You do not show affection to a hollow shell. You do not pour warmth into a man who is a Tuesday night phantom. I tapped the screen to pause the file. The silence that returned was different now. It was jagged. It was broken. I stood up from the chair. I did not need to yell. I did not need to defend myself. The truth had its own volume. I looked at my mother, who was trembling so hard her pearl necklace rattled. I looked at my father, who had aged 20 years in 3 minutes. And then I looked at the audience. That was recording number 1, I said. My voice was level, clinical, and absolutely lethal. There are 3 more. Does anyone else want to tell the room how selfish I am? I stood there, the blue light of my phone, illuminating a different kind of truth, the kind that lives in spreadsheets and bank statements. For 8 years, I have been the silent investor in your version of a perfect family. I have treated our relationship like a contract, but I was the only one fulfilling the obligations. You wanted to talk about my selfishness. Let us talk about the $4,500 I have been transferring out of my account every single month. $2,500 for a mortgage you could not afford. $920 for health insurance premiums. And the most insulting part, $800 every month, so my father could maintain his membership at the country club, where he tells his friends he is a retired executive. I looked at Madison. Her car payment, $280 a month, came directly from my sweat and my missed vacations. She drives a luxury sedan, while I drive a decade-old Civic with a cracked windshield. My compassion has not been a gift. It has been a resource you have overdrafted for years. This was not love. It was a subscription service. And tonight, I am cancelling the plan. People wonder why I stayed so long. Why I kept paying the price for people who did not even like me. It is a psychological trap called learned helplessness. I lived in a prison without bars, one built by the hands that were supposed to protect me. I grew up believing that if I just gave enough, if I was just useful enough, I would finally be enough for this family. But the goalposts never stayed in one place. They moved every time my bank balance went up. I remembered being 12 years old. I had saved money to buy a used textbook I wanted for my education. My mother caught me with it and told me I was being an egotistical child for spending money on myself when Madison needed a new dress. That same afternoon, she spent $1,000 on a custom dress for a pageant Madison did not even place in. Back then, I believed her. I believed my needs were an inconvenience to the collective. I spent 2 decades trying to apologize for existing by paying for everyone else's comfort. I thought I was taking care of my family, but I was actually being harvested. I was the silent partner in a failing business of lies. I watched my mother glow when she talked about Madison's TikTok followers, while my professional achievements were met with a request to grab the salad from the fridge. I was never a daughter to you. I was a recurring revenue stream. But here is the thing about financial managers. We know when an asset has become a liability. I have audited my life, and the Mercer family is officially bankrupt. I looked at the 40 people in the room, seeing my boss Marcus nodding slowly. He understands the math. He understands that a ledger that only flows in one direction is not a relationship. It is a theft. My mother did not apologize. She did not fall to her knees in shame or ask for my forgiveness. Instead, she lunged for the microphone, the feedback screeching through the ballroom speakers like a dying animal. Her face was no longer a mask of church-going grace. It was a contorted wreck of desperation and fury. She gripped the chrome stand as if it were the only thing keeping her from drowning. "Do not listen to her!" she shrieked at the 40 guests, her voice cracking under the weight of her own exposure. Grace has been under immense pressure at the firm. She is unstable. She is having a mental breakdown right in front of you. I sat perfectly still, watching her pivot from mother to predator in 0.6 seconds. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. She looked at Marcus, then at Dr. Pham, her eyes wide and pleading. These recordings are fake. They are spliced together. She is using artificial intelligence to punish us because she is jealous of Madison's success. She has always been the bitter one, the one who could not handle that her sister was born with the charm she lacked. Beside the microphone, Madison did not stop filming. She did not put the phone down to comfort our mother or address our father's 22-year betrayal. Instead, she adjusted the angle of her tripod, her eyes fixed on the engagement metrics on her screen. She began narrating to her followers in that breathy, life coach voice that always made my skin crawl. Guys, you are seeing it live. This is what I talk about in my Gary live coaching sessions. This is toxic sibling envy. My sister is having a psychotic break because she can't handle our family's light. We need to pray for her. But more importantly, we need to protect family values from people who weaponize secrets. Gregory, my father, finally found his voice, but it was not to ask Linda for a divorce or to explain himself to his wife. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You think you're so smart? You're just a manager, Grace. I'll call the partners on Monday. I'll tell them you're unstable." I didn't flinch. "Go ahead, Gregory. My boss, Marcus, is sitting right there." He didn't see a breakdown. He saw a forensic auditor identify a 22-year fraud. My value to the firm just doubled. Yours, however, has hit zero. I watched them, and a profound, icy realization settled into my bones. They were not sorry for the 22 years of bowling lies. They were not sorry for siphoning nearly $5,000 a month from my life while I ate out of plastic containers. They were not even sorry for stealing $45,000 from my grandmother's trust. They were only indignant because the mask had slipped. They did not regret the lies. They only resented the exposure. My mother began to cry then, but they were not the tears of a broken heart. They were the tears of a performer who realized the audience was leaving. After everything we gave you, she sobbed into the mic. The roof over your head, the clothes. We sacrificed our lives so you could be a success. And you repay us with this? You are a monster, Grace. A cold, calculating monster. I looked at her, then at the red dot on Madison's phone. The room was no longer a party. It was a crime scene, and my family was busy trying to hide the bodies while the cameras were still rolling. I realized then that you cannot fix a foundation made of rot. You can only stop trying to hold up the roof. I did not reply to my mother's theatrics. I did not need her microphone. I had something far more powerful than a staged speech. I walked over to the table where my work bag was sitting, unzipped the leather, and pulled out my laptop. I set it down directly on the white linen tablecloth, right next to a half-eaten plate of expensive appetizers I had paid for. The screen glowed, a cold, clinical blue light that reflected in my father's widened eyes. I did not look at them. I did not need to see their fear to know it was there. My hands were steady as I logged into my primary checking account. This was not a breakdown. This was a liquidation. Since you are all here as witnesses, I said, my voice echoing in the sudden vacuum of the room, let us look at the actual numbers. I did not wait for a response. My fingers moved across the keyboard with the precision of a woman who had audited thousand-page ledgers for a living. I opened the recurring transfers tab and turned the screen toward the room. I wanted everyone to see the truth, in black and white. At exactly midnight, the bank will process these cancellations. The $2,500 mortgage payment for the house you are currently living in, cancelled. The $920 monthly supplement for the health insurance you claim I do not care about, cancelled. My sister Madison's luxury car payment of $280, cancelled. And the most insulting part, the $800 my father uses every month to buy drinks for his colleagues at the country club. I just terminated the authorization. As of tomorrow morning, you are all responsible for your own illusions. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of Madison's phone hitting the floor. She had finally stopped her live stream. Her face was a mask of pure, unfiltered panic. Her coaching brand was dead, but the financial reality was hitting her harder than the loss of her followers. Grace, you cannot do this, my father stammered, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. We have a life here. We have a reputation. I looked at him, and for the first time in 30 years, I saw him for exactly what he was. A man who had been living on borrowed time and my sweat. You have a reputation built on my $4,500 a month, I replied, my tone as cold as a Charlotte winter. I am simply taking my investment back. I looked toward the back of the room and gave a small nod to a woman sitting quietly in the shadows of the last row. Vanessa stood up. She was not a neighbor or a family friend. She was my attorney. She walked down the center aisle, her heels clicking like a countdown clock, on the marble floor. She did not look at the guests. She did not acknowledge the drama. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thick manila folder, setting it down on the table next to my laptop. This is the professional escalation you did not prepare for, I said to my mother. Stephanie's eyes darted to the folder, her breath hitching. Inside this folder is the evidence of $45,000 stolen from the trust fund my great-grandmother, Eleanor, set up for my future. My mother thought I would not notice the discrepancy. She thought I was so distracted by my career that I would not see her hand in the till. She was wrong. Vanessa has already filed the formal notice of claim. We are giving you exactly 14 days to initiate a repayment plan for the full $45,000, or we will take this to a different kind of room, one with a judge and a court reporter. The room erupted. It was not the murmur of gossip anymore. It was the sound of a total collapse. My family was no longer a unified front of moral superiority. They were just people caught in a very expensive, very public fraud. I did not feel a single drop of regret. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrawn for years, and tonight, I was the one closing the account. I looked at the 40 people who had come to watch me be humiliated. They were seeing a masterpiece. But it was not the one my mother had written. It was a forensic audit of the Mercer family, and the results were in. They were bankrupt in every way that mattered. The room was a vacuum of held breaths, the amber light of the chandeliers now feeling like the harsh glare of an interrogation lamp. I did not look at my mother's tears or my father's trembling hands. I looked at the waveform on my phone. One file left, the kill shot. This was not just about the bowling lies or the stolen $45,000. This was the moment I revealed the structural rot that would ensure this family never stood again. You all think this is just a family dispute, I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs like a winter wind over the Atlantic. You think it is just about a daughter who stopped paying the bills, but it is much deeper than that. My mother has been using my money to fund her run for the city council. She spent $45,000 of my inheritance on consultants and campaign ads. She wanted power, and she expected me to be the silent donor. I looked at Stephanie. Her eyes were hard, even through the moisture. She still thought she could survive this. She still thought she had a career. But here is the entry the audit missed, I continued. I pressed play on the final recording. This one did not sound like a romantic tryst. It sounded like a high-stakes business meeting. She is focusing her ground game on the east side next week, my father's voice said. It was sharp, clear, and devoid of any affection for the woman standing 3 feet away from him. She is dumping the last $10,000 of the trust money into a direct mail blitz. If you launch the counter ads on Monday, you will bury her before she even hits the stage. A woman's voice answered. A voice many people in that room recognized instantly. It was Linda. Not just Linda the mistress, but Linda Vance, my mother's primary opponent in the upcoming election. Perfect, Linda said, her tone dripping with professional coldness. I cannot believe she is still spending that girl's money while you are feeding me the play-by-play. You are a treasure, Gregory. My father's laugh on the recording was a jagged thing. 22 years of supporting her ego. I am ready for my payout, Linda. When you win, you remember who gave you the keys to the city. The sensory shift in the room was violent. It was as if the temperature had dropped 40 degrees in a single second. The sound of my mother's campaign donors, people who had sat in those folding chairs to show support, was the sound of a mass exodus. They were already standing up. They were not just shocked. They were politically radioactive. They were looking for the exits, their faces masks of pure, unfiltered disgust. Marcus, my boss, looked at me with a nod that felt like a final certification of my character. He saw the manager who had uncovered a fraud that spanned decades. Stephanie did not shriek this time. She did not reach for the microphone. She turned toward my father, her hands curled into claws. The political career she had built on my stolen life was being dismantled by the man who had pretended to be her treasurer. It was a hostile takeover of her entire identity. Gregory did not even try to lie. He just looked at the floor, a man who had sold his wife's ambition to her greatest enemy. I stood in the center of the wreckage, the only person in the room with a balanced ledger. $45,000 of my life had been converted into weapons for a woman who was currently being gutted by the man she shared a bed with. I did not destroy this family. I just gave their lies a stage and a microphone. I closed my phone and looked at the crowd. The audit is complete, I said. The bank is officially closed. 14 days is a lifetime in the world of logistics and financial recovery. For 2 weeks, I existed in a state of absolute clinical clarity that I had never known before. My apartment in Charlotte, once a place where I merely hid from the weight of my family's expectations, had finally become a sanctuary of silence. It was no longer a place of hiding. It was the headquarters of my new life. I woke up every morning and looked at the plant on my counter, the one that cost $5 and represented the first thing I had bought for myself, without checking the Mercer family ledger first. The air in the room felt different. It did not smell like the expensive, suffocating lilies of the resort ballroom anymore. It smelled like the cedar of my new desk and the sharpness of fresh coffee. I had spent 8 years as a silent investor in a business of lies. But now, the audit was winding down. The knock at the door came at 3 in the afternoon. I did not jump. I did not feel the old, familiar spike of cortisol that usually accompanied a visit from my mother or a text from my sister. I set down my pen, saved the spreadsheet I was working on, and walked to the door. I did not need to look through the peephole to know who was standing there, but I did it anyway. Stephanie and Madison, the two architects of my public ambush. When I opened the door, I did not remove the chain. I kept the barrier between us, exactly as I had learned to do in my professional life. I looked at them, and I realized that my father had been right about one thing. Masks eventually slip. My mother, Stephanie, was no longer the polished, board-ready politician in the cream blouse. Her eyes were red, her hair was limp, and the pearl necklace she had worn to my 30th birthday, the one I had suspected was bought with my stolen inheritance, was nowhere to be seen. Madison looked even worse. The girl who lived for the camera and the live dot on her screen now looked like someone who had not slept since the resort lights went out. Her designer jacket was wrinkled, and the confidence that usually radiated from her had been replaced by a frantic, jagged desperation. I did not say hello. I did not invite them in. I stood there, unemotional and reason-driven, waiting for the performance to begin. "Grace, please," my mother started. Her voice was small, stripped of the authority it had held when she spoke into that microphone 14 days ago. "We have been trying to reach you. Vanessa will not return our calls. The bank, they sent us a notice. A notice of default," I corrected her. My voice was level, steady, and clinical. "That is standard procedure when a mortgage hasn't been paid in 90 days. I stopped the transfers 3 months ago, Stephanie. I was just waiting for my birthday to let the bank do my dirty work." "We cannot pay it, Grace," Madison blurted out. She stepped forward, her hand reaching for the doorframe as if she were trying to find a way inside. Gregory moved out. He will not answer his phone. "And my accounts, they are frozen. All of them. I lost my sponsors. Every single one. They saw the stream. They saw what Dad said about Linda. They called it reputational risk and cancelled my contracts. I looked at my sister, the girl who had filmed my humiliation for content, and I felt nothing but the cold satisfaction of a balanced ledger. The risk was always there, Madison. You just did not think the audience would turn on the performer. Grace, you have to help us, Stephanie pleaded, her fingers trembling against her purse. The house, Eleanor's legacy is at stake. The bank is threatening to take everything. If you would just withdraw the claim for the $45,000, we could use the remaining trust money to settle the debt. We could find a way to fix this. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I did not hand it to her. I held it up so they could see the official seal of the court. This is not a check, I said. This is an emergency ex parte order signed by a judge this morning. It freezes every cent remaining in that trust fund due to your documented misappropriation of $45,000. You are officially locked out until the audit is resolved. You are destroying your own family, my mother shrieked, the old Stephanie flaring up for a brief, ugly second before collapsing back into tears. After everything we did for you, you are going to let us be homeless? I looked at her, and for the first time in 30 years, I did not see a mother. I saw a liability that had been in the red for too long. I am not destroying you, Stephanie. I am simply withdrawing my support from a production that was never a partnership. You told 40 people that I was selfish for having a limit. You told them I was tearing this family apart. I am just giving you exactly what you asked for. A life without my selfishness. We were wrong, Madison sobbed. We made a mistake. We did not know about Linda. We did not know Dad was. We were just trying to protect our brand. You were protecting an illusion at my expense, I replied. You treated my compassion like a luxury you could overdraft indefinitely. You did not realize that every withdrawal eventually requires a deposit. I unlatched the chain. For a second, hope flared in their eyes. They thought I was going to let them in. They thought the good daughter was finally going to cave. But I only unlatched it so I could hand my mother the paper. This is the notice of default from the bank, I said, my tone final and absolute. And this is the legal notice from Vanessa's office. You have 14 days to return the stolen $45,000 or face criminal charges for misappropriation of funds. My father sold your ambition to your rival, and now you are selling your pride to me. But I am not buying any more. Grace, please, my mother whispered, her face pale as a ghost. I looked at them both one last time. The Mercer family brand is officially liquidated, I said. And as of right now, the bank is closed. I closed the door. I did not slam it. I did not need the noise to prove my power. I just turned the lock. The new, heavy brass lock that only I had a key to, and I heard the soft, decisive click that signaled the end of 30 years of debt. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and picked up my pen. Outside, I could hear them crying on the porch, but it sounded like noise from a distant world. Inside my apartment, there was only the sound of my own life, quiet, and finally, perfectly, in the black. I've come to realize that some people will only ever value you for what they can take from you. They will call your boundaries selfishness and your self-respect betrayal because they have spent so long living on your credit. But the truth is, you are not responsible for holding up a house built on lies. You are only responsible for building a life that is truly yours. If you find yourself in a similar situation, remember that setting a boundary is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of clarity. It is the moment you decide that your life is no longer an open account for people who refuse to respect you. Forgiveness is not always for the other person. Sometimes it is the only way to set yourself free and finally hear the sound of your own life. If you have ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself, I want to hear how you did it. Let us talk in the comments. And if you want to join a community that values truth and justice, make sure to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next story.